Breaking news: visit by Hamas leader to Cairo suggests renewed momentum in negotiations for a hostage swap and another truce in Gaza. As part of a diplomatic frenzy to secure another ceasefire and hostage exchange while the militant group is putting up strong resistance to Israel's offensive, the leader of Hamas traveled to Cairo on Wednesday for discussions regarding the war in Gaza. During the 10-week war, which has devastated much of northern Gaza, killed nearly 20,000 Palestinians, and forced some 1.9 million people, nearly 85% of the population, from their homes, Ismail Haniyeh made his visit the day after Hamas unleashed rockets that set off air raid sirens in central Israel. Israel has demanded that the international community designate Hamas as a terrorist organization and work toward its eradication following the group's attack on southern Israel on October 7, which led to the outbreak of war. But recently, through indirect talks mediated by Egypt and Qatar, the parties have resumed their efforts to establish another ceasefire and free additional hostages taken in that attack in return for Palestinians held by Israel. Again on Wednesday, mobile phone and internet service went down across Gaza, which could make it harder to get in touch with the Hamas leaders who went into hiding after October 7. A large dispute continues over hostages. A flurry of activity from high-level officials in the past few days didn't seem to have moved the two sides any closer to an agreement. For the remaining captives, Hamas is likely to demand the release of numerous Palestinian prisoners, including high-ranking militants, demands that Israel has so far denied, and reiterated its stance that no hostages will be released until the war concludes. During a week-long ceasefire in November, Egypt and Qatar helped mediate the release of 240 Palestinian prisoners from Israeli custody in return for the release of more than 100 hostages held by Hamas. About 129 hostages are still being held by militant groups like Hamas. Without giving more details, Hamas stated that Haniyeh, whose whereabouts are rarely publicized despite being believed to be based in Qatar, would meet with Egyptian officials to discuss the war. Fearing Israel would refuse to let them return, Egypt, which borders Gaza, is extremely worried about a possible flood of Palestinian refugees. Israel announces final clearing in northern. According to Munir al-Bursh, a senior official from the health ministry, at least 46 people were killed and over 100 wounded early Wednesday as a result of Israel's ongoing bombardment of the urban Jabalia refugee camp near Gaza City. Strikes in southern Gaza continued into Wednesday morning, bringing many wounded, including women and children, to Nasser Hospital in Khan Yunis. A young boy sobbed as he lay on a stretcher next to his injured mother, who was later lifted and placed on top of him. On Tuesday, Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant announced that Israeli forces were conducting a final clearing of militants from the area by penetrating Hamas tunnel network in northern Gaza. According to Palestinian health officials, dozens of people have been killed in bombardment in recent days in the heavily populated urban north, which includes the biggest city in the territory, Gaza City. The fighting has been fierce, according to Gallant. The military's ground incursion in southern Gaza, which targeted Khan Yunis, began in early December, will take months to complete. More than 19,600 have been killed since the war began, according to the health ministry in Gaza, which is run by Hamas. This information was announced on Tuesday. It fails to differentiate between deaths of civilians and combatants. On October 7, militants from Hamas and other groups attacked, killing over 1,200 people, the majority of whom were civilians. 134 Israeli soldiers have been killed in the ground offensive in Gaza, according to the Israeli military, claiming that Hamas uses civilians as human shields when fighting in residential areas. Israel claims to have killed around 7,000 militants without offering proof. UN member continues to press US on discovery of aid. Members of the United Nations Security Council are currently debating a resolution that the Arab world has sponsored in an effort to end the fighting so that more humanitarian aid can be sent to Gaza, which is in dire need of supplies. The U.S. vetoed an earlier ceasefire call, so negotiations to persuade it to abstain or vote yes on the resolution continued, delaying the vote from Monday to Wednesday. Over the weekend, several world leaders, including Israel's closest friends France, the UK, and Germany, called for an end to the fighting. Protesters in Israel have demanded that Hamas and Israel negotiate the release of the group's numerous hostages. Israel has indicated that it will not rest until it has deposed Hamas, destroyed its military wing, and freed all of the hostages. The administration of U.S. President Joe Biden has urged Israel to do more to protect civilians, but it has kept providing military and diplomatic backing to the offensive.